Watch this.
They're back! Lawmakers are collected at the Capitol to debate one bill, something they hope to do in one day. But that depends on one thing. It doesn't get derailed or altered too much. Oh, there was more than one attempt at that. Stopping a school tragedy before it happens is a big ask, and something the State Board of Education says they have an answer. Now they're hoping more schools are going to get on board. From its basement beginnings to one of the biggest tech companies in the world, it's a big day for Boise's Micron Technology, who just announced plans. They're getting bigger. Well, the plan to send $500 million back to Idaho taxpayers, $410 million to Idaho schools, and flatten our income tax rate to under 6% is now just one Senate vote away from going to the governor. The House passing the bill overwhelmingly just a couple of hours ago. This really hasn't been much of a surprise, though, since 35 of the 70 state representatives co-sponsored the bill. It also has the backing of 24 state senators, which is where the bill is now being debated on the Senate floor. And across the rotunda is where we find Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris. Early start today, Joe, but it seems to be coming to a close, or close to.
Yeah, it is. Over in the Senate right now, they're actually debating and discussing House Bill 1. It's already cleared a committee over on the Senate side. So really, we're 3/4 of the way through for House Bill 1 possibly passing. If you're a supporter of House Bill 1, this has been a pretty efficient day. Starting early this morning, Idaho lawmakers first met here in this State House, and they were talking about, okay, we're going to set up our day. We're going to really get organized. And then, as the morning went on, the bill started its way through committee. There was some public testimony. And then really the exciting stuff really started this afternoon when the House bill actually made it over to the floor here on the House side. So that did pass here in the House. 55-15 was the final vote. So some overwhelming support. But there was some really interesting debate in the House. And there was a lot of conversation about things that we do like, things that we don't like. Several lawmakers stood up to say that, I don't love everything that's in this bill, but I will be voting for this because I do think the bill does do some good things. I would have done it differently. Now, specifically, there were Idaho Democrats that do support this measure. They do support the idea of House Bill 1, which will send over $400 million, if passed, over $400 million to public education, as well as send rebate checks, as well as resetting the Idaho tax bracket. So income tax is at 5.8% for all Idahoans. We did hear from Idaho Representative Democrat Lauren Necochea. She's a Democrat that did say that I'm going to vote for this, but I do have some issues with it. Here's what Necochea and other Dems had to say about some of the issues they see with House Bill 1 despite voting for it.
We say we're here today to address inflation, and an earlier version of this bill that was floated had an inflation adjustment so that the funds that we dedicate to education would also increase over time in the out years. It's really unfortunate that the tax pieces of this will adjust for inflation, but our commitment to kids will erode over time in this bill. That's unfortunate. Now we're moving a large majority of taxpayers into just one band, with a very smaller group that will be in that first exempt band. And it's changing what we're saying about our values. We're saying that if you are a teacher, you pay the same marginal tax rate as the CEO. And it moves us further away from ever getting back to a balance of that. And I think the balance across our types of taxes is also important. This bill reduces the income and corporate income tax rate to 5.8%, which is less than the sales tax of 6%. That means a corporation pays a lower tax rate on its profits than working class Idahoans pay for food, for diapers, for medicines, and other basic necessities.
Idaho Republicans also voted yes on House Bill 1, but they saw some issues with it as well. And there were plenty of Republicans, 15 of them, that voted no on this. And one of the things that was brought out by House Republicans was that they believed that the House Bill 1 was actually in violation of the Idaho Constitution. There's a law in Idaho that you're only supposed to have one topic per piece of legislation. Some Republicans were arguing that this bill that combines education and tax relief, they argued that this was more than one topic. Now, others argued they were wrong, saying this is about revenue or inflation. But I asked House Speaker Scott Bedke moments after they actually passed it here in the House his thoughts on if it's constitutional, as well as his general thoughts on it passing his House.
That has always been in the eye of the beholder. Careful reading of Article 3, Section 16 will say that what we did today was absolutely proper. You saw that there were objections and it's hard for me, had I been in my chair, I would have pointed out the rest of the sentence where it says, as long as it's called out in the title, it's okay. And as like Representative Cheney said, that is settled law. We want our kids to have a good education. We want our kids to leave Idaho schools well prepared to go and pursue any career and not be at a disadvantage at the next level. That's why we fund education. We want our kids to succeed and we want them to get a good job.
Do you think today is a success in terms of the House business?
Absolutely. I mean, we've done our job, and I think the Senate will follow suit.
So right now we are waiting to see what happens in the Senate, Brian, but it is already House Bill 1 passed the entire House committee and floor. If it does pass the floor vote on the Senate, it's essentially a done deal.
All right, thank you very much, Joe. Well, all right, you didn't really think we'd get through a House floor debate without some special sesh shenanigans, right? They were there to debate one bill, as we talked about. House Bill 1 began in the House Revenue and Taxation Committee, where it was then sent approvingly to the House floor. That was where things got a little, well, tried to get a little sideways. At one point, Representative Heather Scott from Blanchard decided to make a case against lame duck legislators making decisions, just so her objection is on the record. An objection she tried and tried and tried to make.
One of my first big red flags on this bill is that there's 24 non-returning legislators that are teamed with the executive branch and a lot of
Mr.
Democrats.
Speaker, a point of order. Again, I just wanted to remind everybody about Mason's Chapter 13, Section 121, Number 2, and about impugning motives.
24 non-returning legislators have teamed with the executive branch.
Gentleman from 21.
This sounds personal.
Oh my God.
24 of us who are leaving.
So the gentleman is objecting to, again, back to what the
same
lady
objection.
from 22 was.
This is, Mr. Speaker, this is common knowledge. This is the co-signers list that I'm talking about. I haven't said anything one way or another.
The conclusions that you draw from that?
I have not raised a conclusion. I'm just stating the fact that they have co-sponsored this with the executive branch. Is that not a fact?
That is a fact.
Thank
but the
you.
conclusion that you draw at that point,
I
that's where
haven't
you
drawn
run
a
into...
conclusion.
Yeah,
I
no,
haven't been
you-
able to finish.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if I should just start back over again. Every time I get started,
didn't say
I
that.
get
Go ahead.
interrupted. So there are many good new people.
Gentleman from 32.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to remind the lady that
For an
I
objection?
am elected to represent the people of Legislative District 32 until the 30th day of November. Thank you.
Okay, so the gentleman, you've heard him. He's signed up clear till the end of November, and he's going
That's
to do his
great.
job. Go ahead.
That's very good. I'm so happy for that. Thank you. Okay, so back to my testimony.
She seems so happy about that. Representative Scott did eventually go on to finish her testimony with only a few more objections. But earlier in the debate, Representative Tammy Nichols from Middleton decided to stand and state her objections to the bill.
In light of what we've been hearing today, what we heard during the committee, and the emails that I'm getting from my constituents, I don't feel comfortable with voting on a bill in this manner, and I don't think many of us feel comfortable in voting on a bill in this manner.
So Nichols went on to say she wanted to send the bill back to committee, usually step one in the life of a bill, because, well, she didn't like it, and she wanted the committee to change it, except the committee already had that chance, something Representative Ron Crane rose to recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And good lady, do you serve on the germane committee that this came through this morning?
I believe the gentleman knows.
I don't. I'm trying to look it up online right now, and I haven't found it yet.
Are you on Rev and Tax?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Follow-up question, Mr. Speaker.
Lady yield further. Will the lady yield?
No.
Lady
No,
doesn't.
no, she didn't want to yield to a question. She didn't want to answer another question because she knew what was coming next, right? And she didn't like it. How do we know this? Well, because Representative Crane, he asked the question anyway.
Was there any discussion in the committee or an attempt to send this to general orders by the germane committee?
Gentleman 21.
There was not. There was angst expressed on these kinds of topics, but there was no discussion of sending this to the amending order.
That was Chairman Harris, the chairman of the Revenue and Tax Committee, and says, in fact, the only angst Representative Nichols expressed about the mismanagement was about the mismanagement of funds in that committee, the mismanagement of funds in education, she said, and her wish that more people could be at the State House today to, quote, be part of the process. She started with this.
And while this is, I coined the phrase breadcrumbs, while this is a small tax relief plan, I really feel that we should be doing a lot more for the people in our state and giving them the real tax relief that they need.
Well, first of all, she didn't really coin the phrase breadcrumbs because that's been long part of our lexicon since, well, bread. Secondly, you didn't exactly say anything about changing the bill while in committee during that speech. And when it came time to send House Bill 1 to the floor with a do-pass recommendation.
All those in favor, please say aye. And all opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it, and we will be sending House Bill 1 to the floor with a do-pass recommendation.
So did you hear the silence when asked about those opposed? Yeah, not one, not even a Nichols, which is kind of what Representative Crane was getting at on the House floor. House Bill 1 passed the House 55-15, as you heard, and is now working its way through the Senate. Micron, by definition, is something small. A micron is measured at a millionth of a meter. A millionth of a meter. Well, micron technology is about to get a lot bigger. Just 3 weeks after President Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act into law, a bill that is supposed to provide incentives for semiconductor manufacturing in country, the Boise-based computer chip company felt incentivized. Today, it announced it plans to build a new $15 billion fabrication plant for leading-edge memory manufacturing in Boise. They say it will create more than 17,000 American jobs, 2,000 of which will be directly related to Micron by the year 2030, ensuring a domestic supply of advanced memory chips required for things like car makers and data centers. Micron had made it known they were already planning on expanding their manufacturing capabilities. They weren't sure where that would be exactly. They said in their announcement today, the passage of the CHIPS Act was the push they needed to expand here rather than in Asia. The CHIPS Act, by the way, was voted against by all 4 of Idaho's congressional delegation for what they collectively called bloated, unnecessary spending. Well, this will be the first new memory manufacturing plant built in the United States in the last 2 decades. But what about that first one built here in Boise? Micron Technology was created by 3 computer engineers and a lawyer. 3 of those men, Joe and Ward Parkinson and Doug Pittman, were from Idaho. And so was the initial funding for that plant. The core 4 wanted to build smaller than the current market memory chips, what is called DRAM, or dynamic random access memory chips. And they figured out how to do it. And by doing that, they helped put Boise on the map for computer tech manufacturing by creating what would become one of the biggest memory makers in the world.
Micron made its start at the bottom, its humble beginnings burgeoning from the basement of a dentist's office on Boise's West Bench in 1978. They soon needed more space, and more money to get it. So Ward Parkinson, one of the founders, called up Alan Noble, who'd made a small fortune farming.
I called Alan, who suggested lunch. He brought Ron Yonke and Tom Nicholson. I explained that we had been fired and needed $300,000 to do our own design. Alan says, I am in. After a year, we needed more R&D money, and it started to build a plant. Simplots provided those funds.
By 1980, they had broken ground on the Southeast Boise complex we know today, spending $7 million to build a dynamic random access memory chip manufacturing plant that by most estimates would cost 3 times as much. All that money from Idaho investors. 3 years later, in 1983, the company would hire Boise State graduate Steve Appleton to work on the production line for $3.84 an hour. Appleton would work his way to CEO in 1994. The company's success would be charted by the number of employees and the price of its stock. In 1984, Micron had 700 employees and went public for the first time, selling shares for $14 apiece. Over the next 15 years, Micron would become Idaho's largest private for-profit employer, with 12,000 on the payroll by 1999. A year later, Micron stock would peak at $96.56. By the early 2000s, their memory chips seemed to be everywhere.
For example, if you make calls on your cell phone, if you use your computer, or if you work out with your MP3 player, you're using products made at Micron.
The rest of the 2000s, though, weren't exactly kind to the company.
But this consumer-based product has faced some challenges recently. Dave Parker says the price of DRAM has dropped 80% in the past year and a half, taking profits and 10% of the workforce down with it.
By 2009, Micron closed the last of its manufacturing fabs, leaving fewer than 5,000 workers in Boise. But by last fall, Micron made it known it wanted to spend more than $150 billion over the next 10 years on memory manufacturing and R&D, a pledge that is seeing some progress with today's announcement.
Okay, so now we know we're spending a lot of that here in Boise. Micron says they also plan to put together a partnership with the College of Western Idaho to offer more classes geared toward training future Micron employees. They're also going to increase their investment in K-12 STEM education here in Idaho and open a child care facility right next to their headquarters on Federal Way, where more than 6,000 people work today, making them the second largest private for-profit company in Idaho.
How do we make and keep schools safe? What seems to be a constant question, especially in light of what has happened at our country's schools over the last couple of decades. The answer has leaned toward training for it. These days, active shooter drills are as common as fire drills and earthquake drills. You notice a pattern there? They're all reactions, a guideline for how to act after something happens, which got the Idaho State Board of Education thinking, how can we get out in front of this? How can we prevent acts of violence, like a shooting, before a student gets to that point? The Board of Ed settled on a reporting program called See, Tell, Now, and it's now being promoted in schools all across Idaho. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Preparing for a school shooting was never part of her plan.
When I was in school, we didn't have this, we had earthquake drills.
But provided a passion for her work.
Well, I'm originally from Colorado.
This is reality for Gail Galegas.
There was the Columbine shooting, and that just hit close to heart.
She's the student safety coordinator at the Cascia School District.
I don't ever want us to have a situation where we can't return those students to their parents.
And the Idaho State Board of Education understands this is a real concern.
We don't want to end up in a situation where everybody knew what was going on, but nothing was done about it because they didn't communicate that to anyone. So
Mike Munger's team created a report form called See, Tell, Now. It's a 24/7 tip line for students, teachers, and staff to report odd behavior or concerns.
A lot of times what we see are that kids know what's going on and don't have the tools to be able to communicate it to the people who need to know.
Since its creation 3 years ago, See, Tell, Now is promoted in 230 Idaho schools, reaching 110,000 Idaho students. That's roughly 1/3 of the state's K-12 population.
It is being utilized.
Utilized by the Cascia School District.
The other day we had a 2.5-hour meeting on a student, so it takes a long time to sift through some of these things.
Low-level reports such as bullying go straight to administration, where a threat assessment team at the district decides how to move forward. But some tips are far more serious.
We see suicidal ideations a lot. And of course, you know, that's an epidemic in Idaho.
Sometimes tips are threats against others or against an entire school.
So yeah, that happens.
Cascia had a troubled student years ago. Gail said he made significant threats against others.
It could have ended up in a violent situation at the school.
The tip line brought this concern to the school's attention, where the student received mental health services and transferred to a new school.
He was upset about that, and I said, I'm going to be there when you graduate. And graduation night, he sent me a text message and said, where are you?
How are they doing now? Is this kid?
He's doing great. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes to think about him because he is truly a success story.
That's really the whole goal, is if we have the ability to spend time, effort, and energy, we want to do it in prevention. We want to do it in detection, identifying students that are struggling, getting them the support they need, and helping them move through that process.
But so much better to report it and it be nothing than us look back in hindsight and say, yeah, he was acting kind of strange. I guess I should have said something.
The West Ada School District is the largest school district in the state. Munger says West Ada has signed on to the See, Tell, Now program starting this year, which means the district will promote this tip line throughout their schools, whether that be through flyers and assembly or through their counselors at the school. So essentially letting students know that this is a tool at their disposal, Brian, because if they don't know about it, they're afraid that nobody's going to use it. So trying to get those partnerships with schools so the kids are aware.
Yeah, and it goes back to the old adage, better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, Andrew. We'll be right back.
All right, several questions sent in today. Let's see if we can answer them rapid style here. How exactly is the tax rebate calculated? Will they take your 2020 tax return and either get 10% of that or $300 for single, $600 for a couple, whichever of the three is more, the two, excuse me. Do Idaho's legislators ever vote for anything, asked Diane. Well, yeah, they just voted for this bill, and the Senate may just do the same thing here momentarily. Where is Micron going to get the extra 1 to the million gallons of water a day, asked Tim in Meridian. That's a good question and something we would have asked if they had provided somebody to answer questions today, which they did not, but I did learn in researching the history, they did find a well out there in southeast Boise, so that's where they're getting their current water, at least the majority of it. What's the first largest for-profit company in Idaho, asked Kim. That would be Walmart, actually, followed by Micron. Senate could take a vote up, well, any moment. At this point, there they are still talking about it. We'll let you know what happens on the news at 6. We'll see you tomorrow.